Welcome to the channel. Today's story isn't just about rules, it's about power, betrayal, and the kind of quiet revenge that leaves a mark. You won't believe what this HOA tried to pull, or how it all came crashing down. I'm Charlie, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA that went too far, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because trust me, these stories only get crazier. Now let's get started. The eucalyptus trees bordering Everwood Estate swayed lazily in the late summer haze, their silver-green leaves flickering in uneven sunlight. Sam Jennings exhaled sharply as his battered Honda Civic rumbled up the perfect, freshly paved lane. The car window was down, letting in heat and the distant scent of someone's backyard grilling, but Sam barely noticed. His jaw was tight. He glanced at the letter sitting on his passenger seat, its edges crumpled from being gripped and folded a dozen times since he'd retrieved it from his mailbox that morning. A pale pink envelope, the embossed gold stamp Everwood Homeowners Association, the warning lines beneath. Your vehicle, license plate 3XZK210, was observed in violation of Section 4.18, unsightly parking. This is your second notice. Second notice. Sam's mind kept circling the phrase. He had received the first one just last week, a similar letter accompanied by a photo, his car, parallel parked in the cutout outside his own home. The HOA claimed his tires were not at the proper angle, and that the car detracted from the harmonious visual appearance of the community. His Civic was 12 years old, the paint tired and the muffler a little louder than he'd like, but nothing about it was out of code. He paid his dues on time. He kept his lawn mowed and the trash bins discreetly hidden away before 10 a.m., just like everyone else. What am I doing wrong? He had walked to his neighbor, Kelly, that morning to see if she'd gotten any letters. She shook her head apologetically and offered him distracted reassurances while wrangling a sticky toddler. Sam was alone in this, apparently. The houses all stood like pastel soldiers, identical capes and colonials, most with two-car garages, the lawns so well manicured they almost felt artificial. It was supposed to be beautiful. Lately, it all just looked brittle. He parked in his usual spot, 3 feet exactly from his driveway as required. Before getting out, he checked the angle of the tires. They were within the lines. He backed up, peering at the curb. No violation here. Still, as he walked up the path with the letter in hand, he noticed Mrs. Markham, HOA secretary, peering from her kitchen window, perfectly made up even in the midday heat. She didn't wave, only raised an eyebrow. The unspoken message was clear. Sam didn't sleep well that night. The anxiety gnawed at the edges of his thoughts, even invading his dreams. He kept seeing those embossed envelopes, unfolding endlessly, each one more absurd than the last. In one nightmare, the sidewalk cracked open beneath his car, swallowing it whole while the HOA board clapped approvingly. When he staggered out to his car the next morning, bleary-eyed and irritable, he sniffed the air suspiciously. Were they watching him as he buckled in and turned the ignition? Would he find another letter when he got home? He started to wonder if his car was more than just an eyesore for the HOA. Was it a target? He couldn't shake the suspicion, not as he drove to work, not as he grabbed a cold sandwich at lunch and found himself checking his phone for HOA emails. His anger simmered below the surface. There was shame, too, at being singled out at the pettiness of it all. Had he overlooked a real violation somewhere? Was he scapegoated? Or was this just how it started? Later, Sam sat in his dimly lit living room, flipping the fine slip in his hands, reading the dense, passive-aggressive text again. He read it so many times that the words lost meaning. How had his life become this? Reduced to line items in a manual, the back of his neck prickled. It wasn't just about the money, though the fine was steep. It was about principle, about being treated like a problem rather than a person. As dusk settled, he resolved 2 things. He'd fight this, and he'd find out who exactly was watching him. He thought about his neighbors' stories, the half-whispered complaints over coffee, the fines for grass just a little too long, the panicked text chain after someone's holiday wreath was deemed unseasonal. Maybe it was time for someone to push back. Quick footsteps sounded outside. Sam pressed his face to the blinds and peered out, just in time to see Mrs. Markham snapping another photo of his car. His pulse spiked. He ducked away from the window, the injustice burning in his chest. Would he just let this happen? Watch as another letter showed up tomorrow, their hands on his wallet, their eyes in his driveway. The next morning, when Sam pulled the latest pink envelope from his mailbox, something inside him shifted. It was the same paper, the same impassive tone, but now it felt like a challenge. He drew in a long breath. Part of him wanted to crumple it up. Another part wanted to do something riskier, something the HOA would never expect. A question crashed through his mind, sudden and bright. If they said his car was unsightly, what would it mean to really make it so? He gripped the paper, hope and mischief tangling in his chest. What if, instead of hiding, he made every single one of those nonsensical rules visible for all to see? He turned and stared at his Civic, already picturing how it might look wrapped in all their ridiculous words. But the plan wasn't finished. Not yet. Across the street, Mrs. Markham watched, with a hint of a smirk. There was something in her gaze Sam couldn't quite place. He went inside, mind storming. If only he knew how deep this was about to go, or that the next envelope wouldn't be the worst of it. Sam woke the next day certain he needed more than just his own suspicion. He wanted proof, ammunition. Siege weapons against a rule book. His hands shook faintly as he brought his morning coffee to his lips. The nervousness curled in his gut, frustration tight on its tail. Around him, the house was silent except for the persistent hum of the refrigerator. He pulled out a yellow legal pad and started jotting down bullet points from memory. Tire angle, parking violation. Prohibited vehicle color. Trash bins visible for 6 minutes instead of 5. Mailbox shape not approved finish. Yard gnome classified as decorative hazard. He stood and stared at the growing list, lips pursed. If his own experiences felt surreal, the stories from neighbors were even stranger. He needed more. He decided to ask around. Saturday morning found him canvassing the neighborhood, moving from house to house beneath the heavy blue sky. Every manicured lawn seemed to taunt him, the air full of freshly shorn grass and muffled power tool whirs. Sam tried to keep his shoulders squared, even as he felt the weight of invisible eyes following him. At the Petersons, he lingered at the door while Mr. Peterson peered out warily. "Sam, you, need something." Sam hesitated. "Have you had any issues with HOA tickets? For your car or mailbox?" Peterson exchanged a quick glance with his wife, then gave a rueful half-smile. "We had 3. They said my truck was commercial in nature. It's a Silverado with a decal." He laughed, but the sound was hollow. "I just started parking it in my garage. Cheaper than fighting." Behind every quiet porch, Sam found another story. Mrs. Tran at number 24 showed him her own collection, a series of pastel fines for unauthorized garden stones and wind chimes audible from the street. She shrugged helplessly, voice trembling. "I just pay. They always find something." The stories mounted. The teacher fined for Halloween decorations before October 20th. The new family warned for unapproved outdoor play equipment. Sam's list bulged. But it was when he knocked on Mrs. Rodriguez's door that morning that the plan truly crystallized. She greeted him with wary eyes under thick dark brows, worry and exhaustion drawn on her face. "Oh, the HOA." "You too," she sighed, inviting him in. They sat at her kitchen table with a spread of unopened envelopes. She gestured at the stacks, bitterness edging her tone. "They sent me a fine for laundry lines. I don't even have one. I can't prove it, so I pay." Sam studied her collection, his chest growing tight. "Would you mind," he asked carefully, "if I made a list for everyone to see?" She nodded, a glint of something hopeful flickering in her eyes. On his way home, Sam felt different, both heavier and clearer. He was not alone. The frustration that filled his belly was theirs, too. Back at his kitchen table, he lined up every ridiculous infraction. He imagined them sprawling across his Civic, bold and undeniable, a parade of HOA folly. As he scrolled through customization shops online, a dozen half-baked doubts swirled in his head. Would this just make things worse? Would it backfire? Did he risk getting the neighborhood fined even more? But something inside him said he owed it to every neighbor who had been quietly humiliated. Maybe they all deserved to see what happened when someone refused to roll over. His cursor lingered over a quote from one local shop. "Vinyl wraps, full vehicle, custom print, 48-hour turnaround, price on request." He sent an email. "I'd like a quote on a custom wrap for my Civic. I have the text. Can it be done?" Sam's phone buzzed with an instant reply. The shop sounded enthusiastic, maybe even impressed by his moxie. He attached one sheet, then another. Every HOA citation, nonsensical and official, their language carefully reproduced in massive block text. A small, reckless thrill filled his chest. He hadn't even told his family about his plan yet. Would his sister Emily think he was being childish or brave? Would his parents, retired, living states away, understand why their quiet, rule-following son was risking public shaming in the name of justice? Sam didn't know. The sun outside had started leaning west and the neighborhood was winding down. Kids already called inside for dinner. He could feel eyes sweeping past his windows, lingering a little too long. But Sam's mind wouldn't let go of the images, of faces brightening in hope, of the HOA's expression when they saw their own words splattered across his Civic. He closed his laptop softly and stared at the cold, determined white of the cabinets. He wondered what the price of boldness would be. Across the street, Mrs. Markham stepped onto her porch, one hand shading her gaze. She stared at Sam's house for a long moment, her posture rigid. The tension between them was pulling tighter. He could almost see the next confrontation unfolding, her voice crisp, while he stood his ground. The vinyl shop replied. They could finish it in 3 days, no problem. Now all Sam needed was the final invoice. And the courage to see his plan through. But as Sam stared out the window into Everwood's quiet labyrinth of perfection, something deep and uncertain twisted in his stomach. He still hadn't considered what he'd do when the HOA hit back, harder than ever. On Monday, Sam left work early and drove straight to the wrap shop, papers in hand. He rehearsed what he'd say, palms sweating. Would they think it was stupid? Would they refuse, fearing legal repercussions from the HOA? The shop was tucked in an industrial plaza, its glass door painted a cheerful sunflower yellow. A bell jangled overhead as he stepped inside, feeling both exposed and exhilarated. Behind the counter, a woman with a sleeve of blue tattoos looked up from her computer. Sam Jennings. For the Civic wrap. He nodded, his heart pounding as he handed over the packet of citations. She flipped through the stack, her eyebrows climbing with each page. "Man, they're really creative, huh?" she remarked, tone dry. Sam managed a small smile. "It's not even all of them, honestly." She let out a whistle, sharing an eye roll with her coworker. "We get people wanting camo or flames, but this is performance art. What do you want it to look like?" Sam showed her a rough printout, rows of pastel pinks, blues, and bold black fonts, each line a direct quote from a real citation. The biggest one. Violation, unsightly vehicle, right above where the hood latch sat. The team was enthusiastic, already brainstorming design tweaks before he'd even finished explaining his plan. They promised to preserve every detail, every ridiculous phrase. "You'll park this in front of their next meeting, right?" The tattooed woman grinned. Sam felt his composure cracking, a laugh threatening to spill out. He left the keys and walked a few blocks home, feeling a strange buoyancy, a guilty joy in imagining the looks on the HOA members' faces. But as twilight draped the sky, reality crept in. He found himself pacing the length of his narrow kitchen, the words of his last conversation with Mrs. Rodriguez replaying in his mind. "You know they'll retaliate," she'd said quietly, sorting her mail. Sam hesitated. Each time he thought he had resolved to go through with it, doubt gnawed at him again. Was he just painting a bigger target on his back? Would his neighbors blame him for provoking the board? He remembered watching his father stand up to an unfair principal in middle school, how proud and scared he'd felt, how the cost was always higher than he first imagined. That night, sleep was a stranger again. Sam lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan carving slow, hypnotic circles overhead. The house felt emptier than before, the ticking clock irrepressibly loud. He wondered if the board would fine him for the rap itself. Did that count as a modification? Would they attempt to charge him for public embarrassment? Was anyone else as tired as he was, or had they all simply given up hoping? 3 days later, the rap was ready. Sam biked back to the shop, anticipating the moment he'd see his car transformed. He stopped short when he saw it. His Civic, now shining with vinyl neon, covered in perfect reproductions of every petty infraction. Across the doors, hoods, roof, and trunk, a tapestry of bureaucratic nonsense screamed from every panel. Unapproved mailbox, unseasonal wreath, yard gnome infraction. The car was absurd in all the right ways. He grinned, unable to help himself. As he carefully drove home, heads turned. Some people snickered, others stared, mouths agape. A passing cyclist gave him a stunned double-take. But as he turned into Everwood Estates, Sam felt a chill. He felt like he was bringing a ticking bomb home, and everyone was watching. He parked the car directly in front of the clubhouse. He took a deep breath and stepped back, heart racing. But as he started to walk home, his Civic sitting there, a monument to community control, Sam knew the real showdown hadn't even started. Because at every drawn curtain, every twitching set of blinds, someone was already dialing the next complaint. Sam hardly slept the next 3 nights. Outside, streetlights cast uncertain halos onto the Civic's new wrap, making the vinyl glint in pinks and blues like an oil slick. Every time he glanced through his blinds, he saw someone pausing, a dog walker, a couple in workout gear, Mrs. Markham herself, phone raised, mouth a thin line. He occasionally peered out his window, heart skittering. Each night he checked his email with mounting dread. The community's group chat exploded in a way it never had before. "What's with the car in front of the clubhouse?" someone asked, accompanied by a grainy, zoomed-in photo of the wrap. Minutes later, another message. "Are those real citations?" Sam lurked in the chat, waiting for the worst. Some messaged privately, emboldened by his stand. "I got cited for wind chimes too," wrote one mother of twins. "You're a hero, Sam," wrote another, adding 3 fire emojis. But not everyone was supportive. The board chimed in midday. "Decorum and respect are central to our community identity. This sort of behavior is divisive and will be handled." Sam's stomach twisted as he saw the message. Handled. What does that even mean? The next morning he found a new letter under his windshield, handwritten this time. "Remove this vehicle or be subject to immediate tow as per Section 5.09. No signature. Impersonal, threatening. He knew the code. Immediate tow was only supposed to apply to cars blocking emergency lanes or entrances. But he'd followed every rule. His car was parked legally in an open space in front of the public clubhouse where dozens of cars usually sat untroubled. He pictured Mrs. Markham writing out the note, displeasure tight on her lips. The anxiety pressed down again, but an undercurrent of pride whispered beneath it. Some neighbors now made a point of nodding or waving in solidarity when Sam stepped outside. An older man with a limp stopped to shake his hand. "It takes guts, son," he said in a rough whisper. That evening, Sam sat on his stoop drinking a soda, watching the sunset bleed color across manicured lawns. The world felt different, more dangerous, more alive. 3 more letters appeared the next day. 2 from the HOA, 1 from an anonymous neighbor. "You are making us all look bad. Stop this or else." For the first time, Sam felt real fear. There was anger and humiliation, but now also dread. What if they towed his only car? What if he lost it? Was this worth it? He called the wrap shop. Just hypothetically, if a vehicle like mine was forcibly towed, would the wrap be damaged? The woman on the line whistled. "Highly likely, but you have documentation, right?" He did. He had hundreds of photos and message screenshots, dates and timestamps, a paper trail so tight it could choke. He'd made sure of it. He wondered if the board was so used to people caving that they'd never seen true resistance. Night fell heavy, but the fight wasn't done. On his evening walk, Sam heard distant shouting from the clubhouse parking lot, a tense argument between 2 board members. He strained to listen but could only catch snatches. Publicity, out of control, legal exposure. Sam's hands shook, not just with fear but with apprehension. He knew the club meeting was coming soon, and he just turned it into a neighborhood spectacle. But as he stood on his front walk, feeling both exposed and protected by the absurd armor of his Civic, he realized the board hadn't seen anything yet. Would they escalate or back down, exposed for all to see? Either way, Sam wouldn't be able to turn back. The official HOA meeting was scheduled for the coming Thursday evening. Sam marked the date on his phone, counting down the hours. His entire body buzzed with anxiety. He could barely focus at work. Every passing minute sharpened his anticipation, his fear, his sense of defiant purpose. Rumors swept Everwood faster than a summer storm. Sam's car became the go-to topic at the mail kiosks, the unsightly violation photo reshared until even people from neighboring developments were texting him. "Your car is legendary now," said his sister Emily, sending a winking emoji. But Sam's nerves frayed. His mind was caught in that sick space between dread and excitement. Would they really tow his car? Call the police? Would the meeting degenerate into open chaos, or would he emerge as just another community pariah? Thursday night arrived heavy and electric. At 6:45 p.m., Sam slid on a clean shirt, wiped his palms on his jeans, and set out toward the clubhouse. The sky was bruise purple, spring peepers singing in the hedges. He felt the whisper of glances behind curtains as he walked by, the way neighbors watched, some with outright grins, others with faces wrinkled with concern. His Civic sat in pride of place, twin beams from the clubhouse lanterns making the citations glare wildly. Sam's stomach swooped. Inside, the meeting buzzed with tension. Mrs. Markham presided at the folding table up front, the president at her right, other board members with arms crossed. Chairs scraped. Conversation ebbed and surged, fast, breathless, louder than usual. Sam slid into an empty chair at the back. His mouth felt dry. Sensing his arrival, a few neighbors smiled and nodded subtly. Others turned away, stiff. The president called the meeting to order. "We'll begin with community concerns." Immediately, hands rose. "Sam's car," someone called. "Why is the HOA targeting our neighbors over nothing?" said another. Mrs. Markham spoke, her voice brittle with forced calm. "Decorum and visual uniformity are long-standing parts of our community's peace. Individual displays, such as the vehicle parked outside, cause division. We cannot allow one resident to." She was drowned out by another voice near the front. "But most of these tickets aren't real violations. I have one for a composting hazard that's just my garden bed." There was scattered laughter and applause. The air thickened. The board's faces were a tableau of discomfort and outrage, but also, Sam thought, a thread of doubt. A hand from the room, brittle with indignation. Is the board just making this stuff up? Sam's pulse raced. One after another, neighbors described their own citations, some legitimate, many glaringly petty. Sam raised his voice, surprising himself. The rap just shows your rules, all of them. If the car looks unsightly, maybe the rules are too. The room went silent for a moment. He could hear his own heart. Mrs. Markham's gaze flashed with anger, but the president, elderly and usually passive, cleared his throat uncertainly. "We've clearly lost sight of what people moved here for," he said, voice wavering. "Maybe it's time we have a real review of our policies." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Let Sam keep the car. If you tow him, tow every car parked for meetings, too." The board members exchanged panicked, silent looks. The president finally spoke softer. "We'll address this formally. Tonight, let's hear everyone." It was the first time Sam heard a chink in the armor, but the meeting was far from finished. As it descended into passionate argument with both sides digging in, Sam wondered what lines would be crossed by morning. Would the board retaliate quietly or publicly? Sam's phone buzzed with an anonymous message just as he slipped outside. One line, "You're not as safe as you think." He pocketed his phone, feeling the danger and possibility cresting together. But in the crowd's rising voices, there was hope the story wasn't as simple as the board wanted to believe. The clubhouse lights glared behind him, a beacon or a warning. Sam hesitated, glancing back. Had he just started something no one could stop? That night, Sam sat in the gloom of his living room, every nerve ending twitching with adrenaline. The anonymous message echoed in his mind, tangling with the memory of Mrs. Markham's eyes, hot, bright with calculation. He tried to lose himself in a streaming show but couldn't focus. Every sound outside sounded like a tow truck. The gentle whoosh of traffic, the dogs, the wind, it all sounded like threats, or maybe possibilities. The Civic stood gleaming and garish under the streetlights, unbowed. It was still there for now. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "Nice speech, but you're making it worse." He barely recognized the number. An old neighbor, maybe. That struck harder than the first threats. He didn't want to be the reason people felt unsafe in their own homes, didn't want to bring the hammer down on families who just wanted peace. A new thought nagged at him. Had his stand complicated everything for innocent people? Could the board retaliate against everyone to prove a point? He couldn't sleep. He'd always seen Everwood Estates as a place of order and polite quiet, a community where people nodded over their lawns and dog walkers exchanged tiny pleasantries. He'd convinced himself safety meant conformity. Was he wrong? Had he ever really belonged here? His mom called the next morning, voice warm with concern beneath practiced calm. "I'm proud," she said, "but be careful. These fights have a cost." Sam promised not to do anything reckless. He made coffee and walked outside. The Civic was undisturbed except for a new letter tucked under the wiper. The envelope was now a sickly green, the HOA's logo emboldened and enlarged. He opened it, hands cold. The board had called for a special session on Saturday. Regarding vehicle, architectural uniformity, and conduct violations. He scanned the letter, pulse accelerating. "You are required to attend," skipped pleasantries, no neighborly facade. Walking the perimeter of the clubhouse, Sam saw Mrs. Markham and two board members talking animatedly, gesturing toward the car. He turned away before they noticed him. Inside the house, he started a new list, neighbors who had spoken out at the meeting, stories he hadn't heard before. Now, suddenly, a handful of residents texted him their own experiences. The dam had broken. Someone sent him a screenshot of an anonymous survey started by a concerned parent. Should the board review its enforcement guidelines? Over 60% had clicked yes in just 2 hours, but for every new ally, resistance hardened. On Friday, Someone keyed a slur into the vinyl on the back door. Just shallow enough to be infuriatingly visible, not enough to warrant actual police attention. Sam photographed it and patched it with tape, refusing to let himself be bullied into silence. He sent the photo to the group chat, increased talk of board overreach rising. That night, Sam had dinner at his neighbor Kelly's house, with her toddler pressing sticky hands to his knees. Between bites of microwaved lasagna, Kelly spoke low. "I could never have done what you did, but I'm glad you tried." She paused. "You win even if you lose." Sam's heart ached. The Civic was no longer his alone. It felt communal now, a canvas of frustrations and hopes everyone had kept bottled for too long. As Saturday neared, the atmosphere in Everwood Estates thickened. Voices behind closed doors, neighbors speaking in tight huddles near mailboxes. Sam's story had become their story. The lines were drawn. The special session promised resolution, or something much worse. Sam set his phone calendar, HOA showdown 3 p.m. It felt final. But a strange question grew in his mind, heavier every passing hour. What happens after the fight, win or lose? Saturday arrived, sweat-slick and breathless. Sam didn't eat breakfast. He poured coffee that went cold in the mug, nerves twisting his stomach nearly shut. He dressed and paced, listening to the distant thrum of activity outside. By 2:30, cars gathered like a slow parade at the clubhouse. People milled in clusters, glancing at Sam's Civic with half wonder, half dread. The vinyl gleamed. The graffiti was still visible, a faint scar on the rear fender. Sam watched from his window until he couldn't stand it. He locked up, set his shoulders, and headed out. In the parking lot, the air buzzed with tense expectation. More people had come than usual. Mrs. Markham's mouth set in a grim line as her eyes darted from Sam to the board members to clusters of residents whispering amongst themselves. He spotted a police cruiser at the curb, its presence heavy and ambiguous. Inside, the board perched behind folding tables, name placards in place. Their faces held tight, strain visible. The crowd filled every seat. Some people stood against the back wall. Mrs. Markham opened. "We meet today to address direct and indirect challenges to the unity of Everwood Estates, the issue of unsightly parking and protest displays has divided this community." Soft murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sam felt hands trembling in his lap. Residents spoke, this time with more confidence than before. Stories emerged of fines for ridiculous reasons, tickets issued without warning. A young father stood. "My son's basketball hoop was cited. It's got wheels. I rolled it in after every game. Still got a $30 fine." A grandmother, voice shaking with memory, described a letter about unapproved geraniums. Laughter and sympathy mingled. Markham's voice, when it came, quivered with anger and justification. "We are tasked with preserving property values. Sam's actions threaten those values. This rap," she bit off the word, "is a hostile act designed to embarrass us." Sam rose. He felt his voice coming from somewhere just outside himself. "What else do you expect us to do? We tried being quiet. We tried asking for compromise. The rules have gotten so absurd they only make sense as a joke." The silence that fell was deep. The board countered, clinging to guidelines and authority. The police officer said nothing, but his mere presence drew the room tight around the idea of escalation. Tempers frayed. Someone in back shouted, "We should vote." "Why do they get to decide everything?" Another, "What are the rules even for if they only matter for some of us?" Markham shifted, mouth tight. The president, pale and frail, finally spoke. "Maybe enforcement has outgrown fairness. Maybe we need to pause." Small applause broke out. The board hesitated, cornered for the first time. But as the debate intensified, the officer leaned toward the board's table, whispering something. Mrs. Markham's eyes flashed fear, then anger. "In light of recent incidents, "We are considering suspension of parking privileges for certain individuals," she said stiffly, "and legal review of conduct breaches." The crowd stirred restless. Sam's heart hammered. Would they punish him or everyone? Would this be the moment the board snapped? He didn't know. But as questions exploded in the room, it was clear something irreversible had begun. The police officer stood, adjusting his belt. "We're not here for that," he said, "just to prevent escalation. No laws have been broken." The tension spiked, then simmered. No resolution, no promises. Sam walked home, civic untouched, fear and adrenaline churning, the air too thick to breathe. He still had no idea how far the board would go, or if his own courage would last. Sam's nights became jagged, sleep-fitful and shallow, haunted by confrontation and what-ifs. In the days after the special session, Everwood Estates buzzed like never before. Neighbors who had once ducked their heads now crossed streets to commiserate or offer quick, nervous support. Others shot him wounded looks, as if his act of defiance was itself a betrayal. The board, silent for a day, seemed to regroup. Tension thickened. Monday came with a new, unexpected twist. Sam stepped outside to see a local TV van idling at the entrance, its antenna straining skyward. Kelly jogged over, hair tied back, whispering excitedly, "They want interviews about the car." Sam's pulse leaped. "Did you tell them?" "They already know who you are," she said, her smile worried but proud. An hour later, Sam stood before the cameras, his car's rap loud in the background, sun gleaming off absurd HOA citations. The news anchor probed gently, a half-smile lifted. Why fight the system at all? Sam swallowed. "Because rules shouldn't become weapons," he said. "They're supposed to help, not hurt. Right now, we're being hurt by the people meant to protect us." More neighbors stepped forward. The grandmother from the meeting described her geranium finds. The father with the basketball hoop spoke, pride warming his features as his son clung to his leg. The story was no longer about Sam. It was about Everwood. Across the neighborhood, people watched news vans and cameras. Phones buzzed with links to the live report. Sam wasn't sure if he felt braver or more exposed than ever before. That night he received a dozen messages from strangers, people from other communities sharing their own HOA nightmares. One wrote, "Your car gives us hope." But the board countered, sending out an email. "Contact with the press violates community media guidelines. Disciplinary measures may follow." The threat was bold. It laid bare their thinking. Control came before community, image before justice. Sam posted the email on the community chat. The reaction was swift, a mix of outrage and grim humor. Within an hour, the HOA's credibility cracked a little more. But the next morning brought escalation. A string of cars, including Sam, found threatening notes on their windshields. "You're making it worse for us all," read one. "Back down, or else," read another. The fear wasn't just theoretical now. Someone was targeting dissenters. Sam pressed a trembling hand to his chest. How far could this reach? Once quiet neighbors had become targets too. Was retaliation next? That night, beneath the soft glow of his porch light, Sam found it hard to tell hope from dread. His phone buzzed again, an anonymous tip. "Check the next board agenda, you're in for it." The Civic, still wrapped, was now a symbol, a warning and a dare. What would the board try next? The car remained in place, still as bold and bright as the day it returned from the shop. Neighbors started taking photos with it. Some joker even put a plastic crown on the hood, and the picture made rounds on group chats. "Long live the king of citations," the caption read. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He became hyper-aware of every car that drove slowly past his house, every unfamiliar figure strolling by on a too-early morning walk. Was that new sedan someone's cousin, or a board member checking on him? The next board agenda circulated with unusual speed. It called for sweeping changes, suspensions, further fines, possible litigation for community defamation, and deliberate disregard of code. Sam wondered briefly if that second one had ever actually been enforced before. On Tuesday afternoon, Sam received a formal notice by certified mail. The board scheduled a disciplinary hearing, not just about the car, but about actions undermining the values and governance of Everwood Estates. He texted the wrap shop for advice. "We've seen HOAs like this before. If they threaten to tow, call us. We'll bring the news crew with us." A brief surge of satisfaction shimmered through Sam. He wasn't just alone anymore. But every support message was countered with another threat, each moment of sunlight chased by gathering clouds. Meanwhile, in the group chat, voices multiplied. People who'd never spoken up before began to share their own tales. Failed garden projects, paint colors the wrong shade, pets cited for walking off-leash at 8:01 a.m. "You're not crazy, Sam," someone typed. "We've all felt powerless. This needs to end." But the board doubled down. New mail followed. Citations arrived for minute infractions, his grass too brown under the mailbox, the civic knot reflecting community values, a plastic shovel left leaning inside the garage. They couldn't stop. The more the board struck, the more absurd their case seemed. But at every turn, Sam wondered where the breaking point truly was. Had the community reached it? Or was everyone just waiting for him to get crushed so life could slip back to fake normal? His phone vibrated late at night. A neighbor, anonymous. "We're with you. If they boot your car, we'll protest." Sam smiled, exhaustion and hope warring inside him. Tomorrow, the disciplinary hearing. Would it be the final blow, or the start of something redemptive? Sleep refused him, and the humming anxiety pressed tighter. He wished, not for the first time, that fighting for decency didn't feel so lonely. He closed his eyes, not knowing that the next day would bring a decision no one could predict. The next morning carried an electric charge in the air, an undercurrent of expectation, fear, and reluctant solidarity. Sam woke far earlier than usual, showered, and dressed slowly, memorizing the familiar edges of his humble home like it might be his last day in it. His phone pinged with support messages, the group chat waking up early, friends and strangers texting. "You got this, and wish I could be there." At 10:00 sharp, he walked to the clubhouse. The parking lot overflowed, more cars than he'd ever seen there, his Civic still center stage. As Sam passed, a neighbor patted his shoulder. Another squeezed his arm and whispered, "We're behind you." Inside, the crowd had swelled. Nearly half the community, it seemed, had squeezed into the folding chairs, lining the walls and pouring into the hallway. The board sat poised, brittle and formal behind their plastic table. At the front of the room, Mrs. Markham looked directly at Sam, her expression pure granite. "Mr. Jennings, do you understand the severity of the accusations?" He nodded, hands sweating, heart pounding. The charges were read: defamation, negligence of community collaboration, public embarrassment of the board, unauthorized signage, abuse of communication protocols. Sam almost laughed at the theatrical language. He stood, voice wavering at first but finding steel as he spoke. "I parked a legal car in a legal spot. I spoke out because I couldn't take the petty punishments anymore. Neither could most of us." He motioned to the wrap, the citations, the neighbors shifting in their seats. Somewhere in the crowd, a slow clap started. Others joined, hesitant at first, then louder. Mrs. Markham's fury was practically radiant. "We are the duly elected authority in this association. We must enforce standards." "But you abuse them," Sam interrupted, surprising himself as he held her gaze. "This isn't safety, it's control. No one feels at home anymore, not even the board." The crowd buzzed. Others rose to speak. Kelly, her voice quivering but determined, recounting years of anxiety over minor noncompliance. Mr. Peterson, finally unafraid, described feeling bullied into compliance. Others joined, the stories gathering weight and power. The board tried to regain control, declaring potential legal steps, fines, and even threats of property liens. But the tide had turned. Someone called for a vote, an actual community-wide vote, on whether the board had the confidence of the neighborhood. People raised hands, applause breaking out in bursts. For the first time, Sam saw real fear in Mrs. Markham's eyes. But the hearing adjourned with no decision, a promise of review, legal consultation, and further notice. Sam left, legs weak, mind whirring. Would the board follow through on their threats? Would the community continue to stand with him, even as the pressure mounted? The uncertainty hung thicker than ever. At home, Sam sat with his head in his hands. His phone glowed with new messages. "However this turns out, you changed things," one read. But had he truly? He never realized how fragile justice felt when it finally teetered on the verge of becoming real. Days bled into each other, quiet but tense. The neighborhood held its collective breath. Sam avoided his own windows, too worn out for stares or small talk. Every time a delivery truck paused outside, his heart leapt. He slept lightly, waking at odd hours. But news quietly spread. A group of neighbors, some of the same rule-breakers, started a petition. It called for a formal review of the HOA's enforcement procedures and a temporary halt to new fines. Signatures cropped up on clipboards, front steps, even slipped under Sam's door at midnight. The neighborhood wasn't reverting to silence. It was awakening, tentative and uneven. The board sent out stiffer, edgier emails. Unauthorized petitioning is a violation of bylaws. But copies of the petition multiplied. Anonymous leaflets began appearing in mailboxes, listing the HOA's most ridiculous recent fines. Meanwhile, more cars parked beside Sam's Civic, several festooned with handmade posters quoting their own absurd citations. Candle visible through window after 10 p.m. Flagpole height exceeding 8.5 feet. Dog barked once after 9. Resistance had become public. The community Facebook group blazed with new members, sharing horror stories. More came forward. A single mother fined for a faded welcome mat. A wheelchair-bound veteran cited for having a ramp constructed from non-standard material. The board doubled down, threatening stricter enforcement. Legal counsel, even suggesting dangerous elements had infiltrated Everwood. But for the first time, Sam felt true momentum. He walked his street one night hesitant. Several neighbors raised hands in silent greeting. The Civic, battered and patched, had become a rallying point. Still, Mrs. Markham was nowhere to be seen. Rumor spread that she was seeking legal counsel of her own, that a secret board meeting was underway. No one knew what would come next. The hope was fragile, so new it felt like glass in his hand. Then one night Sam found a letter taped to his door. No greeting, no threats, just 2 sentences. "You get one shot, don't waste it, look under your mat." His hand trembled as he lifted it. What he found there made the world tilt beneath his feet. Sam knelt, heart roaring in his ears, and lifted the mat. A slim envelope, off-white, with no return address. It was addressed to S.J. in small, unfamiliar handwriting. He glanced around, but the street was quiet, the hush of midnight stretching in all directions. He slipped inside and locked the door before tearing it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, unsigned. "If you want the board, and Markham in particular, out, timing is everything. Tomorrow afternoon, a closed session to review leadership is scheduled. Only board members and select residents invited. If you show up, they will claim it's for legal review and try to eject you on process. But if you bring witnesses and raise formal points of order, per Bylaw 9.12, you can request an emergency vote of confidence. 5 signatures needed at once. Seize the floor before Markham adjourns." No signature, just the instructions. Sam sat, pulse wild, staring at the letter. His mind flashed back years of quiet desperation, stories collected, hopeful voices gathering over the past hard weeks. He immediately grabbed his phone. Kelly, Peterson, Mrs. Rodriguez, the grandmother with the geraniums, the father with the basketball hoop. He called, texted, summoned them all for a hasty meeting under his porch lamp. Within 20 minutes they clustered at his entryway, nervy, excited, frightened. He read the letter aloud. They all hesitated, until Mrs. Rodriguez, voice trembling, said, "We have to try or nothing changes. For us or anyone." Together they mapped out a plan, 5 signatures ready, points of order rehearsed, witnesses lined up. Kelly offered to bring copies of fines marked and highlighted. The rest of the night was a blur. Sam barely remembered the sunlight creeping across his blinds at dawn. The following day, at 2 p.m., they walked together toward the clubhouse, a small knot of resolve in a swirling sea of anxiety. A board member tried to stop them at the door. Sam, throat dry but voice steady, cited Bylaw 9.12, member-initiated motion. Inside, the board, already on edge, froze, startled by their entrance. Mrs. Markham's composure slipped for a moment. The others shifted nervously in their seats. Sam stepped forward. "We request, per bylaw, an immediate vote of confidence regarding the board's leadership and enforcement decisions. We have 5 formal signatories. We are entitled to this discussion." He handed over the signatures silently. The witnesses flanked him. The room was tight with expectation, airless with possibility. Markham tried to gavel the discussion closed. Sam spoke over her, quieter but firm. "You can't adjourn an active member review. We have the right to proceed." The board president, a tired old figure now, seemed to waver, sensed the winds shifting. Neighbors craned in the glass doorway behind them, the whispers of those left outside trickling in. The vote began, the room charged with emotion. Sam did not look away from Mrs. Markham, whose face had finally, truly changed. As each hand went up down the line, no one in the room could see where it would land, or if Everwood's story was about to be rewritten forever. Sam's own hand hovered, heart throbbing as he waited for an end he could barely imagine. The tension in the boardroom was palpable, the silence so thick it settled in Sam's lungs. He could hear his own pulse pounding, see the fear in Mrs. Markham's eyes, her mask of authority finally slipping to reveal uncertainty beneath. The board president called the vote, his voice no longer steady. One by one, members raised their hands. Aye, aye, then a trembling nay. When it came to Mrs. Markham, her arms stiffened but stayed at her side. Her power, once unchecked, seemed to drift away right there, a visible physical loss. The final count, 4-1 in favor of the motion for leadership review. A door that had always felt locked swung open, if only a crack. Sam's group presented their signed petitions, highlighted fines, and the testimonials of a dozen residents. The old stories poured out, each citation landing not as complaint, but as evidence. Years of suppressed frustration spilled free, and even some board members, faces flushed, began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. A neighbor not previously involved stood up. "We deserve to feel at home here. Not hunted in our own driveways." A brief murmur moved through the crowd. The board president, voice softened by something like relief, made it formal. "Effective immediately, the current enforcement committee will be suspended pending outside audit. All recent fines are paused subject to review. This association will elect interim leadership within 30 days. There was no cheer, just silent disbelief, a washing relief. The weight let go all at once, leaving most people blinking at the sudden possibility of change. Sam let the moment hang, heart pounding. No closure, not really, not yet. Markham stood, gathered her papers with trembling hands. Whether she'd leave quietly or cause further waves, no one could say. Her eyes landed on Sam for a single, venomous flicker before hardening into something unreadable. She walked out into the June heat, her shadow long across the tidy walk. The vote was just a beginning. Review and reform would be hard, complicated, tense, full of disputes and dashed hopes with old habits that didn't die easy. But people in Everwood began talking again. Silences broke. Neighbors swapped stories, offered apologies. Former foes tried awkward jokes, tried again. That evening, Sam sat on his porch steps, worn thin, watching Kelly and the other petitioners bring popsicles for the kids playing in the now-crowded front yards. His Civic still glimmered, ridiculous and proud, every citation now a public badge of resistance. A kid rolled by on his skateboard, shouting, "Nice car, Mr. Jennings." Sam managed a smile. Everything was still up in the air, nothing decided, except that silent obedience was over. He breathed deep into the gathering dusk, nerves strung but, for the first time in months, not afraid. Because behind every twitching curtain, people were joining him now, not hiding from the HOA, but beginning to believe that even the most brittle rules could be changed. A single car turned the tide. But in Everwood Estates, the fight was only just beginning. And in the dark, a pale pink envelope still waited in someone's drawer, proof that the people, not the rules, would write the next chapter. If this story moved you, share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories where justice, courage, and community collide. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment where the little guy stands tall. We'll see you in the next one.